I'm the storyteller, and my stories must be told. I have many stories, tales for both the young and old. I have many voices to describe many places. Many names have I, and many faces. In Russia I am Ivan, in Sweden I am Jan. In Germany I'm Johann, in America I'm John. From my many travels I have gathered these tales to teach you good sense when all else fails. Sometimes there are tears, sometimes there is laughter, but always are happily ever after.
Long ago and far away, there was once in the middle of a warm and gentle sea a remote and rocky island kingdom. The capital city was a bustling market centre where people of many nationalities came to trade and barter their wares. There was everything you can imagine, from fine rugs and jewels to humble household goods. However many strangers filled the bazaars, there was always one familiar face, that of a little beggar. He was a well-known character, always cheerful and smiling. He knew everybody. He also knew those who would give him more than money. These people were usually good for a meal. Such a person was a tailor. The beggar was always a welcome guest at the tailor's table, for he always had the most marvellous stories to tell. He would tell all the latest scandal to the tailor's wife. He would tell the tailor all the latest news that he'd picked up from sailors and traders. He was always full of jokes. This day, he soon had the tailor and his wife in fits of laughter as the party enjoyed the meal. The couple certainly didn't begrudge the little beggar the food, for to them it was worth every single mouthful, and the beggar certainly did full justice to it. Suddenly, in the midst of all the laughter, the poor beggar started to choke on a fishbone. He coughed and spluttered. The tailor and his wife thought it was all part of an act and only laughed louder. Even when he disappeared under the table, they weren't particularly concerned. When at last the tailor began to shake his friend, telling him to stop playing the fool and finish his meal, he realized that there was something dreadfully wrong. The poor man was dead. His wife was very upset. Apart from the fact that they were very fond of the little beggar, what would happen to them if the truth came out? What were they to do? Someone might even think that they had done it on purpose. And suppose he has a family and they demand money in recompense, she cried. There was nothing else to do. They must wrap up the body and carry it to some quiet place and leave it. Oh, not in our own cloth. People will recognize it. We must wrap him in a plain blanket so that no one will put the blame on us, the tailor's wife ordered. Quickly as they could, they wrapped the body in the blanket. It was the hottest part of the day, and everybody was asleep. Not even a dog was about. They crept into the street. Stealthily, they slid through the silent marketplace with their heavy burden. How sad that a simple meal had turned into such a tragedy. Just then they saw a woman coming towards them. They had to think up some story. So they told her that the little beggar was a sick child and that they needed a doctor's services. Then the woman wanted to know who it was, what was the matter, and how long had it been so ill. She worked for a doctor and knew about such things. She would personally take them to the doctor. If they did not do something now, their guilty secret would be discovered. They reached the doctor's house. The moment the maid disappeared indoors to summon her employer, the tailor and his wife seized their chance. They dumped a body on the stairs and fled. The doctor rushed out of his house to attend his sick patient in such a hurry that he tripped right over the body, making it tumble all the way down the stairs. The doctor was horrified at what he'd done. He tried reviving the corpse, but to no avail. "Oh, good heavens, what has befallen me?" he cried. "People come to me to be cured, not killed." He searched for the faintest heartbeat. There was nothing. "Oh, master, what's to be done?" cried the maid. "You will lose all your patients if word of this gets out. What will become of your reputation as a physician? Nobody must know of this." There was no question of it. They had to get rid of the body secretly. That night, when no one was about, they dragged the body along the terrace until they came to a spot overlooking their neighbour's garden. Checking again and again that no one was below, they stealthily pushed the body over. With great relief, they slipped away. They did not realize that the cook from the house next door had heard all this scuffling and pushing. He was convinced that someone was stealing his precious stores. Armed with a sturdy pot, the cook peered about in the darkness. There, sure enough, lying in wait in the shadows, was a crouched figure, clearly his thief. The cook set to with a will. I'll teach you to steal." As the figure didn't so much as move, the cook took a closer look. To his horror, he saw it was the well-known beggar, and furthermore, the beggar was dead. He, the cook, had killed his friend, the beggar. "But I didn't mean to," the cook wailed. "Oh, wake up, my friend, you're not dead." But the beggar didn't stir. Full of guilt, the cook realized that all he could do was to get rid of the body as quickly as possible. "Oh, it's all a mistake. I didn't mean it," muttered the cook as he hurried along the deserted streets. Making sure no one was watching, he propped the lifeless body against the tree. He heard footsteps approaching, so he wasted no time. It was a sailor, very much the worse for drink. When he focused on this figure lurking in the tree's shadow, he was convinced it was a robber after his wages. "Be off with you, fellow," he shouted, "or it'll be the worse for you." But of course, the beggar didn't move. Well, if any thief wanted to rob the sailor, it was not going to be without a struggle. The sailor thought he was winning the fight. He would teach anyone who wanted to rob him. He rained blows and curses on his attacker. All the noise alerted the police. They came running along at the double to see what the matter was. They soon separated the pair. It only took them a minute to realize that one was dead. It was obvious that the sailor had killed him. Next morning, the news of the fight between the sailor and the beggar spread through the town like wildfire. A court was set up in the marketplace so that all could see justice done. Solemnly, the judge read the charge that the sailor had killed an innocent man who had done him no harm. It may be that the sailor had some defense or explanation to offer. If he did have, the judge would listen. The unfortunate man pleaded that it was the drink and promised that he would never touch another drop again. The judge couldn't accept this as a good enough excuse or reason for what the sailor had done. "You are convicted for the willful murder of one of our best-loved citizens," the judge pronounced. "The man is dead, and he is dead by your hand." However much he felt sorry for what he had done, there was no alternative. The sailor must pay for the crime with his life. "By the laws of our country, you are to be executed. Summon the executioner to carry out the sentence." Everyone who could hurried to the marketplace to see the murderer brought to justice. The cook, who knew only too well that the sailor had not killed the beggar, was horrified that an innocent man was to be executed for the crime which he had committed. But if he confessed, he would be executed in the sailor's place. It was indeed sad to hear the sailor's prayer to be forgiven for his crime. The cook was torn with unbearable remorse. "Carry out the sentence, executioner," the judge ordered. The man raised his heavy scimitar to behead the sailor. The cook cried out, just in time, "Stop!" The executioner, the judge, and the crowd were amazed. "Oh, I cannot let an innocent man perish for a crime that I myself committed," the quaking cook told the astonished judge as he threw himself at his feet, pleading for mercy, both for the innocent sailor and for himself. "It was I who killed the poor beggar, Your Honor," the cook cried. "But believe me, it was all a terrible mistake." The judge and the crowd listened in astonishment. The cook told them how he had been plagued for months by thieves stealing his stores. When he thought he had at last cornered the wrongdoer, he had set about him with his heavy copper pot and gave the thief a sound beating. "All I meant to do was teach him a lesson," the cook pleaded. "But I didn't know my own strength, Your Honor. I swear to you I never meant to kill him. It was all a terrible mistake." "But it is true. I am the man who killed the beggar. This poor sailor is quite innocent. The beggar was already dead before the sailor attacked him." Nobody was more pleased to hear this than the sailor. The judge sternly ordered him to be freed immediately and the cook to take his place at the executioner's block. The doctor, who had heard all this, knew only too well who the real murderer was. The crowd watched and waited. But you may be sure that the cook was the most anxious man there. doctor watched with great fear as the cook prepared himself for death. "Stop!" cried the doctor. Once again, the startled executioner lowered his sword. The cook could hardly believe his good fortune. Everybody in the marketplace was astonished. Trembling, the doctor approached the judge, crying, "This is all a terrible mistake, Your Honor. It was I who killed the beggar, not the cook." If the crowd had been astonished before, they were completely nonplussed now. The judge was not at all pleased about this interruption. He didn't like executions at the best of times, and he just wanted it over and done with. The doctor swore that he would never be able to rest if he knew that he was responsible for the death of 2 innocent people. He recounted how a sick patient had been left at his house to be cured of his illness, and how he, the doctor, instead of curing this poor man, had killed him. He told how, fearing for his reputation, and fearing that the beggar's family would demand money from him, he had secretly disposed of the body at the dead of night. I threw the body into the next garden and hoped everyone would think that he just died in his sleep. The beggar was already dead when the cook attacked him, the doctor confessed. Who then killed the beggar? Clearly the cook did not. There was only one person responsible for the beggar's murder: the doctor. The judge decreed, by all the laws of justice, the doctor would have to take the place of the cook. So the poor man was led to the executioner's block, while the crowd held its breath. The tailor and his wife had witnessed all the morning's happenings with growing anxiety. Before the mighty scimitar could fall, the tailor cried, "Stop! That man is innocent." Nothing like this had ever happened in the judge's long experience of the law. Wearily, he listened as the tailor threw himself at his feet and cried, "This could be a dreadful miscarriage of justice, Your Honor, for this man is innocent of the murder of the little beggar, as is the cook, as is the sailor. I, and I alone, I fear, accidentally killed our little friend." And he told how he had invited the beggar to share their midday meal, and how his wife had prepared a fish specially for them, and how they were all enjoying themselves so much that he and his wife didn't realize at first that the beggar was choking to death on a fishbone. It was all a terrible mistake. Their fear that the beggar's family might demand money from them made them behave as they did. "It was I who took the beggar to the doctor's house. I am the cause of all this unhappiness," the tailor confessed. "The beggar was already dead when the doctor tripped over him." Of all the people who have confessed to this crime, it is not the sailor, not the cook, not the doctor. They are innocent. I, and I alone, am guilty.
If the doctor is innocent and the beggar is dead, then you really are guilty of murder, the judge pronounced. And it is you who will have to die.
But are you quite sure that the beggar was really alive before he choked to death at your house? It was I who killed him, the tailor said sadly, as he knelt before the executioner's block. Once again, the executioner got ready with his scimitar. Once again, a man prayed that his soul would safely reach heaven. And once again, the great scimitar flashed in the sunlight. The cook was the first to notice something odd. The crowd grew tense, sure that this time justice would be done. Only the cook, the sailor, and the doctor were not paying attention as the scimitar was raised. The beggar was obviously anything but dead. The crowd burst into laughter. Oh, I feel absolutely awful, the beggar complained. Nobody could believe their eyes. My back feels as if I've been in a fight with a drunken sailor. Happily, the sailor admitted that that was his fault. The judge had never imagined he would hear 4 people confessing to a murder in which the victim was still alive. My front feels as if I've been beaten with a big pan and then kicked downstairs, the beggar complained. The cook confirmed that that was exactly what had happened. And my throat feels very sore. I wonder why. This was too much. Everybody was aching with laughter at the end of the strangest murder trial there had ever been. Life returned to normal. The sailor sailed away to his home and never ever had another strong drink. The tailor and his wife invited everyone for a meal at their house. The doctor's maid, the cook, and the doctor all enjoyed the delicious fish. Everyone, that is, except the beggar, who swore he would never eat fish again.